Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. I'm your host, Tim Reed. And once again, I'm so excited to be here today. Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast. Well, hey, today's episode is one that I am especially excited about for a few reasons, and I've got a little bit of a backstory before we get into it. So this episode is actually the first one that we recorded for this season, and it's the first one that we ever recorded video for. So, in the history of this podcast, it started out as, an audio podcast. I think that we might have done a couple of video episodes way back in the day. I know that we did one with Carter Harkins and Taylor Hill. That might be it though. And over the last 6 to 8 months, we've just been thinking about making the leap to try and jump into the video world to just make it more accessible and interesting for people who want to see it and hear it. And today's episode is the first one that we ever recorded. I went to Nashville a number of months ago for a conference that Donald Miller put on with his company StoryBrand, and it was a marketing conference that was really, really impactful. I invited to go with me my friend Robert Schnell, who lives in Alaska. He's been on this podcast, I believe, 2 times before. I think this is his 3rd episode that he's been on, and he actually runs a lighting company called Arctic Sales, and he is a lighting rep up in the Alaska Anchorage area. Now, we met 8 years ago at a Donald Miller marketing conference that was in Seattle, Washington. We happened to get into the same elevator. We happened to be sitting next to each other at the event, and we absolutely hit it off, and that started a friendship. So we felt like, man, when we had the chance to go back to Nashville for another conference, we said, let's do it. And so we took some extra time. We actually ended up staying a couple of days afterwards to really work on fine-tuning these marketing messages for our own businesses. And our time together was absolutely transformational. And so, I felt like, man, I'm going to bring the podcast gear. Let's debut, seeing how it goes, recording this stuff on video. And let's talk about what we're learning at the conference and what we're taking away from it. And that's exactly what today's episode is. We'll get into this more on the back end, but I think that most companies in our industry waste most of their marketing dollars. Point blank. Most companies in our industry waste most of their marketing dollars. And the reason for that isn't that they're spending them on the wrong things. I'm not against a Facebook ad. I'm not against a Google ad. I'm not against direct mail or, an ad in a magazine. But if we don't have a message that is actually compelling, and we don't have a sales funnel to bring someone into, to guide the path for them to do business with us, all the marketing in the world will not help us. And, it was really, really cool just being at this conference away from my day-to-day life, just to be able to think and focus on effective messaging. And I certainly came away with a lot. So with all that said, this is a really simple conversation. Basically, me and Robert are recording from our Airbnb the day after this multi-day conference, just simply talking about marketing. So if you have struggled with putting together an effective message, if you've struggled with why do people not care when they see our website or when they hear our ad on the radio, what does it take to actually make something that works? This is the conversation for you. As always, we'll circle back at the end. I've got a lot of thoughts to wrap this up on when it comes to marketing. But for now, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Robert Schnell. Joining me live from Nashville, Tennessee is the principal of Arctic Sales, Robert Schnell. Thanks for being back on the show, man. This is number 3.
This is number 3, back in Nashville.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a first for a few reasons. Number one, this is the first video podcast that we have ever recorded. It's not going to come out first, but this is the first actual one in the timeline. So that's a first. But the last episode we did was actually in my car.
Yep.
Playing
on a road trip.
Yeah, Business Desert Island. And that was a first as well, recording a podcast from the car. So thanks for being yet another first.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to give a little bit of context. We met in 2018 in an elevator.
Yep.
We had both signed up to go to a Donald Miller StoryBrand workshop, and we were both going alone. And we literally met in the elevator. He's like, "Hey, I'm Robert. Hey, I'm Tim." I was like, "Oh, this guy seems pretty cool." I was feeling a little awkward, a little bit out of place. You know, it's like a expensive, high-class event. I'm trying to figure out, do I belong there? And in that elevator, we connected. You made me feel like I belonged. We went to a happy hour that night with Don and the StoryBrand team. And then at the event, it turned out that we were sitting next to each other. And that was 8 years ago. And it started a friendship. And what brings us here to Nashville is that we were back at another live StoryBrand marketing event. So it seemed fitting to do a podcast about marketing coming full circle. Is that a good summary of how we met?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
cool.
An awesome summary.
So, okay. You're in the lighting industry.
Yep.
You are not in the fireplace industry, but there is some overlap in the sense that there's like product complexity and things like that. Maybe we could start with this. Why did you choose to go to a marketing seminar or conference in Nashville?
This was definitely a refresher. So as I've taken more ownership in the company over the years and started running it, it's mostly been about how do I communicate ideas clearly? How do we move customers from confusion to making decisions? And when you mentioned that there was an opportunity to kind of revisit the material, it was a great opportunity to just kind of see what else we could do to clean up our marketing, really just communication, because these frameworks have actually changed everything and how I actually communicate in my personal life outside of work, and then also communicating ideas in my team and then the market. So it's kind of surpasses just more than actual marketing collateral or things you send to customers in the market.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, and I think the purpose of this conversation is going to be, for folks who didn't get to come to this event, like what are the takeaways? If we want to think about doing marketing that's effective and communicating in a way that makes sense, how is it that we do that? And maybe we can start with this idea that the customer is the hero of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? And where do you see companies getting this wrong?
Gosh, well, we had a conversation yesterday with a guy who sat in front of us, and he mentioned how much he had to reverse what he was teaching. And I empathize with that because he's basically like, every time I do a presentation, I stand up and I talk about how great I am, how great our company is, because you feel like you need to build customer trust through positioning yourself as the expert. Whereas in reality, customers don't really care about that. They care about the problem they have and whether or not you position yourself as a solution to that problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the problem first, and I did the same thing out of college, right? I'm right out of college, I'm an electrical engineering graduate, but I have no engineering experience. And I'm working with electrical engineers and contractors and electricians that have been doing it for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come in and tell them how to do their job as someone who's fresh out of college that knows nothing. Mm-hmm. So I'd get up and I'd stand up and be like, engineers, I'm an engineer, right? So I'd try to position myself like, I'm an engineer like you. And this company that I'm a part of, my stepdad started, we've been in business for 25 years and we represent these manufacturers and they're this good. So I'd get up and I just talk about myself to just think that was building trust when it was the exact opposite.
Yeah, it is the exact opposite. Why would you say that it actually undermines trust when you talk about how great you are and you make your company the hero?
I think fundamentally it makes it look like it's all about you.
Mm.
If it's all about me and my sales, I only care about myself, my business, my people, me. Yeah. But if I start with actually positioning that I care about solving their problem, what is that? Gosh, who had that quote where it's basically like, is it Zig Ziglar, where it's like, if you help enough people solve problems, or it's like essentially like money's not going to be an object.
100%. You can have anything in life that you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want first.
Yeah, exactly. So fumbled that quote pretty good, but just ultimately, if I come up and it's about me, then it also means the solutions I provide are only to serve me.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree. And it's one of those things like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
100%.
And I think like, at least in our industry, there are literally companies that have their name as like, we are the fireplace heroes. We are, and it's like, man, that's a dangerous spot to be with your messaging because that takes the focus off the customer and their problems. So that's the foundation. Any time that we want to do effective marketing, we have to make sure the customer is the hero.
Mm-hmm.
So in every piece of messaging collateral that I have, when I look at it, we gotta ask, who is the hero of this story? So if we say, we are the best provider of fireplaces in the Atlanta area, who's the hero of that story? Not the customer, right? We are, you know, versus if we say, we help families in the greater Atlanta area stay warm and safe by having a fireplace in their home. You know, now we come alongside as the advisor or the guide to help the customer accomplish what they want. And I think that if companies can simply make that shift, everything changes and how effective their marketing is. But so we've talked about this some before in the past on the podcast. You know, don't make it about you, make it about your customer. Talk about the problems that you solve. But let's get into some specifics. What are some takeaways like that you had from the last couple of days in this like marketing intensive?
Well, 8 years ago, we kind of reframed a lot of our positioning in the market around saying like we make lighting simple, right? So we simplify the process, and that's true. But even just the last day and overnight, as we kind of unpacked a lot of this, it's like actually complexity kills jobs. So we're actually fighting against complexity to a job. And I think if we look to solve that problem more clearly, like this is just the shift I almost had like just last night about this takeaway of I can continue to make that messaging more clear, because that's still a fairly vague, kind of a vague explanation. If it's saying we make it simple, like, we'll make what simple? Lighting. Well, and it's like, well, if you start with the problem, this is so complex because it's a language that you don't speak and you don't understand the technology that's changing. We kind of go that category. We kind of demystify the process and then actually can steer them towards a solution and ultimately solve their problem.
Yeah. You know, that's really good. One of the takeaways that I had that I thought was really terrific is the way the workshop is framed out is it would be like lecture for 45 minutes, and then you would get like 5 to 10 minutes to work individually on like creating your own messaging. And then it would be like 20 minutes of collaboration between like you and your partners. And there were coaches and stuff like that there too. But one of the things that really was imprinted on me is the fact that the products and services that we offer can lead to personal transformation and actually like a different view of how you see yourself. And one of the things that I was thinking about is, you know, for years, like with our quoting software, we had kind of like a tagline of lightning fast estimates. And like, it does do that, you know, it can help you make lightning fast estimates, but that's not like an aspirational identity. And I think about like the struggling sales manager who has maybe 2 salespeople underneath them, and the salespeople just can't quote the same way that the sales manager can. So the manager or the owner is having to oversee everything. They're staying late at night. Their team is losing jobs because they can't turn quotes around fast enough. And instead of saying, oh yeah, we help you make lightning fast estimates, which is like, oh, that's cool. But there's actually a transformation to say, you can actually become a great sales leader. Like you can actually give your team the tools to quote like they've been doing it for 30 years. And it's youth, it's the catalyst of this transformation. And I think that now, again, like this is not curing cancer. This is in our example, quoting software, but there is an identity change that happens when you or I view ourselves differently. It actually changes the way that we live. And if I go into work feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't lead these people, I'm frustrated at them, it all comes down to me, you know, when am I going to stop being steamrolled by this? If that's the way that I view myself, I'm going to live in accordance with that reality. But if I can actually give my team the tools to make a transformation, and I can look and say, man, like I've become a good sales leader. Like I've given them what they need. They're succeeding. They're quoting. Our customers are happy. That actually changes my identity. And the point of all that is when we create marketing collateral, talking about the identity transformation is really important. In the case of a fireplace, you know, you could go from a living room that is cold and a family that's distracted. You can have a place where your whole family wants to be together. That's an identity shift. It's not curing cancer. It's not saving lives necessarily, but it's a real tangible shift in identity that like your family can go from being distracted and disparate to hanging out together. And even subtle things like showing pictures of a family playing board games in front of a fireplace. I was just reminded how important it is to talk about that transformation of who someone can become when they use a given product or service. And
So good.
this can be manipulative, but it doesn't have to be. Like,
Yeah.
it's a true story, I think. Like in the fireplace industry, a family can go from having a room that no one wants to be in and everyone's off in their separate corners to having a central space where people want to hang out, where your friends want to be together. You're creating a place for connection. That's a true transformation of identity, where you go from being someone who is trying to, just get people in one spot to someone who's actually created a place of community. So anyway, that was really impactful for me.
That's a really good point. Yeah, around the identity shift, because they used examples throughout the room that seemed anything from trivial products for like Christmas decorations to, they talked about hair care solutions to skincare products, medical devices, right? I'm a lighting rep. There's all these solutions, but when Don was talking about developing his property, he's like, lights were really important for him when he had an undeveloped property and his wife didn't feel safe and realized that we have a whole, we got this plot of land that we need to build our dream home on in this event center in this space. And then they realized, and her first reaction from the way he described it was, it's so dark out here.
Mm-hmm.
Lights are really important all of a sudden for safety and security.
Yeah.
So, and just taking pride in that and that identity shift to being more confident, and it does translate beyond just work.
Yeah, 100%. One of the big things that we talked about is really articulating the customer problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, Don mentioned this the other day, that you can get a lot of things wrong in your messaging and marketing. And this applies to the showroom sales as well. When you're talking to a customer about a fireplace or something, you can get a lot of things wrong. But if you can articulate the problem that they're experiencing, that will forgive many sins. And that's terrific. Let's go that direction. How does
so defining the problem, but I think even the more clear I am about the problem, the more clear I am about the solution.
100%.
Because if I haven't defined the problem and I start with, okay, I'm doing this, I'm meeting with an engineer, I'm meeting with an architect or an owner on an opportunity that they're saying, hey, I've got this building or I'm working on this new project or proposal, and it's vague, I'm kind of throwing darts at the board saying like, okay, well, you could do this. And they go, well, actually the lobby looks like this. And I go, well, with the lobby looking like that. And then so whereas if they have a clear vision and saying we're doing, a nonprofit space, or we're doing this office improvement, but it has to be fast because there's a quick turnaround to move this lease agreement. Now I have different terms that are more specific. A very clear problem of it's actually about speed. So what's the most economical, fast way to do this project versus, we have a 2-year construction timeline. But with a clear problem defined, then I can be really clear on my solution. So that was really I think my biggest takeaway is just getting so clear, doing the hard work to being more clear about the problem you're solving.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about this in the Fire Time sales process. We teach step 2 of the sales process is understand the problem. And that part of the sales process is actually the longest part. You need to spend more time understanding the problem than you do in the next steps of advising a solution and everything else. Because if we fail to understand the problem, we miss everything. But when it comes to our marketing, we do have a pretty good idea of what our customer's problem is. And I just think about, again, I'm contextualizing this for our industry, but let's pretend that you're going to do a magazine ad or a Facebook ad. I guess it doesn't really matter what the medium is, but if you're going to do this, and we have 2 options, you could say option 1, XYZ fireplace store, family owned since 1985. Right? You could do that, and you could say gas fireplaces, wood fireplaces, pellet fireplaces, whatever it is. Right? Okay, so that's like the typical route to go. Why? Because we need to tell our story. That's what a marketing company will tell you. But that doesn't mean anything, because no customer wakes up in the morning thinking, "Boy, I'm looking to find a family-owned business, and it'd be really helpful if they started in 1985." That's not what they wake up thinking about, right? So if instead we make our tagline a problem, and that problem might be no family should be cold when the power goes out. Like that is a statement of empathy. I mean, it's a problem as well. But that's a statement that is going to get someone to turn their head. Or if you were to say, there's nothing worse than not having a source of heat when the power goes out. That's probably that might be a better one than that'd be more of a problem statement. But when you say something like that, that's going to turn ahead. Like, yeah, like I want something to keep my family warm and safe. And I think the point of that is that when we start with a problem, now in the fireplace industry, I keep going to power outage. That is such a powerful lever to pull because there's urgency, there's safety, there's security involved. But there's other things too. Maybe it's your home should have a place where people want to gather,
100%.
Or no family should be a slave to the electrical grid. I guess I'm going back to the power outage when the power goes out.
Yeah. Like my wife grew up with a wood stove in her house, and her dad built their house. And so actually fireplace is really important because she's like, it reminds her of like cozy childhood.
Yeah.
Reading a book in front of the fire, the family gather, like you're saying, playing board games, being just everyone is in a single space.
Yep.
And it was a gathering point, right? So she's constantly having this discussion actually around fireplaces.
Yep.
Around saying like, how do we convert this to a wood stove? Because we have I think we have a log lighter, and it's like, I don't know the technical term. I'm not a doctor of the hearth industry, but right, you go through this process and you're just like, man, well, how do I make this process clear? And I literally have this actual problem as I'm talking to you. But the feeling is she's like, I just want to sit in front of the cozy fire.
100%.
Read a book.
Yep. And again, so going back to problem, like if there was an ad in your market that said, most fireplaces actually make the house colder because they don't have what it takes to be heat efficient. Now that's a little bit of a mouthful, but like that's a serious problem. It's a totally true statement. And if you have that problem, my house is most fireplaces leak drafty air into the home and aren't efficient for heating it. These are a little bit wordy examples, but it's speaking about a problem that if you have that problem, you're compelled to go, oh my gosh, like tell me about the solution. And we had a lady sitting next to us that was in the medical space, in particular dealing with infertility. Mm-hmm. So like this is a big deal. Like she literally helps families, have kids and grow. And she's on the marketing end for this education and some products. They have to literally help doctors better diagnose and treat causes of infertility. And when we were in our workshop, there was a phrase that we kind of came up with as a group. And I forget, there was a technical term for when doctors are not able to diagnose the source of infertility. It was like, do you remember what it was?
I think it was called undiagnosed, or like it was like a non-answer.
Undiagnosed infertility.
I think it was literally called undiagnosed infertility.
Something like that. So
the diagnosis is there's no diagnosis.
Exactly. So her statement of the problem was, no medical professional wants to tell their patient undiagnosed infertility, something like that. Okay. And that's if you're a doctor and you're a medical professional, the last thing that you want to do is go through all these tests just to say, we don't know.
100%.
And her messaging on this was so brilliant. No medical professional wants to tell their patient undiagnosed infertility, whatever that is, whatever the technical term was. That is incredibly captivating because it speaks to a problem that she said a lot of doctors have to give this diagnosis basically of we don't know. And this lady is like, we have the tools to give them so that they can know and they can move forward with a diagnosis. And that was just an example of like, if you can figure out the problem and talk about that in your marketing, people will turn their head. And you're not being manipulative. You're not lying. You want to speak to a true problem. But that is so much more effective than at J&Y Medical Education Incorporated. We educate practitioners on the latest trends of infertility so that they're able to diagnose every situation. Again, like something like that is not going to get someone to turn their head. But when you start with the problem first, it does.
Well, and the contrast around professional and I don't know, right? So that's the identity.
Yes.
So you're like, that's the identity shift that you were just talking about a few minutes ago, because no medical professional wants to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're like, golly, I went to college. Like I said, went to college and I've been residency and doing this for like 10 plus years to get to this point to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Even like you're saying, not being manipulative, that was a big kind of a final pin on the presentation or the workshop yesterday, was where Don was teaching and saying, like, the baseline assumption is you already have an ethical business. So we're going to assume that you're working, that you solve a problem. So you're going to affirm the decision.
Yep.
So with integrity, you're going to affirm the decision. And I love that framework around affirming and calling to higher standards around building better businesses and solving. If we solve the problem, we should be really confident about this, that we do actually solve that problem.
Yeah, 100%. That's terrific. Hey, this is Tim with the Fire Time Podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this episode. You know, a lot of businesses in our industry are in a situation where the owner or the manager is stuck approving every single quote because the rest of the sales team simply can't quote the way that he or she can. If this is your company, then you have to check out Wi-Fire Pro. Wi-Fire Pro is a simple estimating system that will help anybody on your team write quotes like a 30-year professional, guaranteed. We load your brands into the system, we set it up with your pricing, create custom vent kits with a simple drag and drop menu and easy style pricing. Anyone on your team will be able to write estimates. Honestly, even my 9-year-old daughter went on a business trip with me last year, and she wrote up 23 estimates for custom fireplace jobs because she knew how to follow the simple instructions. If you want your team to quote like professionals and never lose a job again because your team couldn't quote it or it wasn't sent in on time, you got to check out wifire.com and look at Wi-Fire Pro. Hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode. I think this is really important when it comes to follow-up. So yesterday, one of the things in the workshop that we talked about was the fact that you need to follow up a lot more than you think you do. You know, in our sales process, we teach a minimum of 7 follow-ups per opportunity per salesperson. I'm coming to the point, though, where I think we're going to actually increase that by quite a bit. You know, now in the example that was given in the workshop, StoryBrand recommends 104 follow-ups, like literally 2 emails a week until someone makes a decision. And that is pretty intense, to say the least. But the idea is that when you are following up with a customer via text, via email, or a phone call, they're really busy. They have a lot of things going on. And when you first start to follow up, they may or may not be experiencing the full weight of their problem. Maybe something happened to bring them into the store, but now that like you've got out to quote it and you've sent them the bid and you're going back and forth, maybe something else has come up. Like maybe the weather's turned, it's not as cold anymore. Maybe they want a vacation, or maybe whatever it is, but they may not be experiencing the problem the same way. So yeah, you're following up, but they don't recognize the number. So they screen it. They get the voicemail that night. Or if you're like me, like 3 days later, you know, and by that point you're like, oh, like they're closed now. I can't call them. So they're busy, and you know, an email comes through and, oh yeah, it's the fireplace company. So you just delete it because you're not experiencing the problem. The point was, in the workshop, you keep following up because you don't know when they might say yes. And the purpose of the follow-ups is about staying top of mind. A lot of people think, I got to advertise in the market to be top of mind. I think that's actually dead wrong with companies as small as our industries. We can never advertise enough to be top of mind in the marketplace. We don't have, $500 million a year to invest in our marketing. But when a customer has shown interest in us and we have their contact information, now we start trying to become top of mind via phone, email, everything else. And the idea is that maybe on the 30th emails, crazy as that is, maybe they've deleted 29 of them, but every time they see your company, they see your company, they see your company, they see your company. And let's say 6 months has gone by, and all of a sudden they go to start the fire, it smokes the whole house out, or, whatever it is, they go to light their gas fireplace and the thing won't light and it's cold outside and they're experiencing the problem. Boom. Who do they call? They call you because you're top of mind. If you don't do that, then they might call anybody. But I think that was a really important lesson, and it validates, like, we don't want to bug people. We're not trying to pressure them, but if they've shown interest in our products, let's consistently pursue the opportunity, because we have to be in front of them when they're experiencing the problem.
I think, it's so good. When you do that kind of follow-up, that was a framework shift for me as well, because you would think I would do follow-ups on a specific project, and there's a reasonable follow-up to that. But if I'm doing a general statement around we solve lighting, we solve heat in your house, and we're solving this problem, you're the problem solver, and you're constantly saying, I'm solving a problem. And while you might be ignoring it or dismissing or deleting it or filtering it, you're saying, oh, I don't have that problem right now. But it's still a problem you're solving. So I'm curious about the problem. And I mean, he pulled out his phone. Don pulled his phone out yesterday and was talking about how he's got this belt company that texts him and how he's bought this belt for the last few years. And I laughed about it, because here you've got this, this marketing genius who's also falling into the same, I don't unsubscribe from this text for a belt I bought.
Because it might go on sale.
Yeah. And I did the same thing with shorts. I bought new gym shorts 2 years ago, and I got this, I literally showed it to you yesterday. I'm like, I'm getting like 2 years of text that I've not unsubscribed to because I might have a 40% off sale.
Yeah.
So I've got two companies text me consistently, and one of them is telling me about shorts every other day, and I'm always like, yeah, well, maybe I'll never need another pair of gym shorts. But when I spilled oil on my shorts when I was changing my oil in my car over the summer, I immediately was like, I need to buy a new pair of shorts. I immediately went to that company.
So yeah, it's really good. And again, like in our industry, in the fireplace industry, and I guess for you in lighting, you're selling to contractors that are continuing to, or you're working with contractors that are continuing to come back to you. In our industry, we have, at least in the B2C business, people buy these things every 10 to 20 years. It's not like they're coming in, 6 months later to buy one for their home again. But you never know if someone's going to move. You never know if they're going to have a friend. But these things do need service every year. So it's like, one of my takeaways is like every fireplace company should have a text and email service campaign, every single one. And it's probably going to be once a quarter, but every quarter send all of your customers, and you can segment it based on their product type, wood, gas, pellet, but send them a text and an email with your service special. And if you do that, again, yeah, they are probably going to delete it the first time, but they're likely not going to unsubscribe. And if they get hit with that in the winter, I mean, maybe in the winter you do it once a month. Maybe you do that, and in the off season you do it a little bit less. But
home maintenance is one, right? Like I've been having this, I need to clean out my gutters, and I'm always like right on the shoulder season, and I think about it, and it's starting to freeze, and I'm like, it's too late. I can't get on the roof. But if I had these types of services reminding me, like, hey, did you know you could prevent leaks in your roof if you just maintain your gutters throughout the summer and the winter, and or we make it easy, right? If you had these reminders that are coming out, I wouldn't be thinking about it midwinter. But man, come March, April, and we're getting into spring, that you better believe that would be a problem that I'm looking to solve.
Yeah. It was a huge reminder for me that we really need to double down on follow up, and we need to have some automation with this. Like I think every company should have a system of follow up where if you write up an estimate, you should be able to plug that into either an email or a text automation that graciously follows up with the customer over time persistently. I still think we need to make phone calls. I definitely think that is a powerful, powerful lever, but we should be making sure that, like, if you get a bid from us, like, you're going to get entered into the follow-up system. And the cool thing is, if the customer says, hey, we're going to buy elsewhere, like, absolutely, like, take them out. We're not trying to like coerce them. But I guess maybe this transitions to something else that's powerful, is that, like, one of the things we talked about in the workshop is that you're not talking a customer into buying something. You're not doing that. They are coming to your showroom because they already want to buy it. I mean, especially in our industry, they want to buy it. Like if a contractor or an architect or distributor comes to you and is like, hey, can you like work on this design for me? Or can like this get quoted out for me? They want to buy it. Like, that's literally why they're coming to you. So you're not talking them into buying it, what you're doing is you are literally giving them permission to buy it. Like when you use marketing, you're giving them permission to do the thing that they want to do, and you're removing the barriers of fear that are stopping them from that. And I guess this is like a fine line. I really think in sales, the definition of it is sales is communicating wisdom to bring someone to the point of a decision. That's our job. Our job is not to make the decision for them. It's to communicate the wisdom that's needed to bring them to the point of making a decision. And I think that when Don talked specifically about how like they would not be talking to you if they were not interested in buying your product.
Well, and getting the proof to know that you actually provide the solution to their problem. So what I kind of love behind the scenes of that is actually it raises the standard, right? If I'm not confident about the solution that I'm providing, I need to get better at providing that solution. So there's a lot of work for me to do on the back end to be like, well, what if this isn't the right? Well, maybe I need to get, I need to get better training with my manufacturers. I need to become a better technical expert in the area to actually be confident in the fact that I'm solving a problem for my customer.
Yeah.
And that really actually inspires me to just how do we keep getting better at what I do? And how do I train my team? And how do we get more resources so that we know this is exactly the solution to the problem that you came with?
Yeah, that's terrific. So, okay. Thinking about this, we've talked about, in our marketing, we need to make sure the customer's the hero. We have talked about some tactics of follow-up and how, customers need to be experiencing the problem when you follow up with them. Otherwise, they're probably not going to take action. What are some pieces of marketing collateral that you are going to create in light of our last few days together?
Yeah. So with specifiers in particular, right, they're going through a design exercise. They're meeting with an owner. They have a selected design team. You'll have an architect that partners with an electrical engineering firm typically. And in that process, there's this you go from vision to conceptual to then specific. And I really figuring out what like a leave behind or not a catalog, but really like, we were talking about writing up like a mini book describing the journey of design to completion, staying within budget, getting the vision that you cast for your customer, impressing your client, position. So we're still working through kind of how do we, right? Like the medical professional, if you're an architect, you want to make sure you elevate and be selected as the premier firm to be doing these types of designs, right? For a hospital, for a clinic, for a school district, for an event center. And you want to be known for that by bringing their vision to life. You're not going to do that if the budget's constantly changing, if it needs to be changed and scrapped and all that. So definitely getting into a position where I'm leaving a resource that solves that problem very specifically, bringing clarity to the design process, which is such a ethereal, ideation process. Whereas it's just saying like, well, if we break it into these 4 steps, right? You meet with the owner, you bring us in, we collaborate, we provide a proposal, and it just like brings clarity so we just communicate clearly along the way. Yeah. And then we provide a solution and they go, okay, versus maybe we just go in circles for, 9 months on a design and we just keep revisiting this conversation because we weren't clear in the front end.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that leave behind mini book, I was really struck by that too. That, the concept of a mini book would be that you actually get something printed, like not digital, like physically printed, like a maybe magazine format, but smaller, like a lot smaller than like a typical 8.5 by 11. And maybe it would be 20 pages or 30 pages, something you could read in 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so. But after you've had a serious conversation with a customer, leaving that behind for them. I was just, as you were saying that, like creating something in the lighting industry, I was thinking about like, what if as a fireplace company, you got a mini book made that was called, we've actually used this one in the past. We used it as a digital PDF, not a mini book, but like 5 mistakes people make when choosing a fireplace, or 4 installation problems that can ruin your budget. And what in your sales process, you're in the showroom, you show them a fireplace, you write the quote or the estimate up, and as they're leaving, you say, hey, I've got something for you. This is just a little book to be put together. You can probably read it in 20, 30 minutes. It's called 5 Mistakes People Make When Choosing a Fireplace. And these are just things that we've found can help you not get caught in a bad situation with your project. And I hope it's helpful for you. If you leave that behind with them, that is powerful. Now, you probably aren't going to lead with that when they walk into the showroom. You're not going to just hand them a mini book. But when you have built the relational trust to be deep enough, I think in our industry at least, it should come after the quote. So like they need to be serious enough. Like we've written a quote, we're moving towards a sale. Like we're moving from maybe like dating to engagement. Like we're somewhere along that trajectory. Now we give them this piece, and it's like that's a differentiator if you're doing that. Because if you can, this is another takeaway. Like if you're the one that can educate your customer and teach them how to think, they will trust you for a solution.
Well, when Don was talking about just consider our own personal behavior, because we want to think like we are actually unique to the problem. Like, oh, well, but it won't work for me because, and I overthink this, right? If I'm solving a problem for this design team and I'm working with an architect or a specifier, I'm like, well, what problem do they have? And is this really clear? But the reality is, will this process work for me? And then I think about my own behaviors and what kind of marketing collateral stays on my desk?
Yeah.
Well, I have a life insurance book. But I already have life insurance, but it's interesting. So I'm like, well, what if
and something tactile like that? It's a lot harder to throw away a legit piece of collateral than just like a brochure.
Yeah. We're in the process of dreaming about, do we want a cabin or where do we want to retire someday? My wife and I, and we just started we're like in the very, very early stages of meeting with a realtor just to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And he's a trusted advisor from someone that I know personally and trust very deeply. And he's very much, I'm learning so much about this process because I'm kind of trying to get in front saying, hey, I don't want to waste your time. We're super early. And he goes, I realize this is probably a 5 to 10 year process. I'm like, okay, good. As long as you understand, I'm not moving on a house in the next 9 months, because we're not. But we might in the next 5 or 10 years, or we might look at a cabin, right? That kind of thing. And, but that's my personal behavior. So why would that be any different for another human that I'm interacting with in the design process? Right? They've got their own dreams and goals. They've got their own problems they need to solve. And if I solve those problems and I make it clear, just like this real estate professional is making it clear, I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, yeah, we send you a quarterly this, we give you a monthly last projects or most 30 days recent homes to give you a budget, an idea of like what the market is like and how hot it is and how priced it is and how sensitive you need to be about rates and percentages. And you can then make an informed decision to say, am I within budget or am I out of budget? And that's just how I'm processing a workshop like this, and how it would apply to my business, because I just need to be more confident in just identifying the problem and moving towards a clarity and a solution.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe we can round out talking about this. I think one of the big takeaways, and I mean, this is, we've known this is true for a long time, but just a great reminder that if you don't have your messaging right, anything you do in marketing will be a waste of money. And again, like speaking for our industry, there are almost no companies that have their messaging right, almost none. And the reason is usually because companies are making themselves the hero, or they're working with an outside expensive marketing company that doesn't know the industry. And I think the telltale sign that you should never work with this marketing company is if they tell you, we're going to help you tell your story, run. Because the customer does not want to hear your story, right? They do not want to hear it. They want to hear how you can solve their problem. And if we don't get our messaging right, anything that we do will not work, or it won't work nearly as effectively. But if we can spend the time up front, and this is hard work, spend time up front talking in detail about, okay, what are the problems that this customer that we're advertising to, what are the problems that they face? Okay, it's X, Y, and Z. All right. How can we empathize with that problem? Okay. What's the answer, the solution that we can provide to that problem, right? Solution matters, but it only matters when you've established the problem first, and then after that, what's the change that they can experience, followed by like, what does life look like afterwards? If we can kind of think through those things, we can run a very effective messaging and marketing campaign on actually very little money, because our rate of engaging customers will skyrocket compared to someone who just, verbally vomits about themselves all over the customer.
Yeah. And they were teaching own the problem. So own that problem.
Oh,
Be
so
very
good.
clear about that problem.
Talk about that. Talk about own the problem.
Yeah. If you walk in and you just say, I own this problem, but you articulate it very clearly. You're not just walking in and being, hey, it's about me. You walk in and you can articulate the customer's problem more clearly than they can. It immediately positions you as the guide and the expert in that situation. So you would be the solution provider to that problem. And if you own that problem, they think about you when that problem comes up. And I kind of reverse engineer that to think, gosh, I have all these manufacturers that I represent, and I have all this complexity behind the scenes of how do I communicate all of these details to a customer when really it's, you have a problem, call me. Yeah. I'm the guy you call. And yeah. I own that problem. So then it's not about, positioning my brands, myself as a brand. It's just like, problem, I can help you with that solution. I do have that solution.
Yeah. And I think the way we own the problem is we repeat it the same way over and over and over. So like as an example, in our industry, if you're a retailer, you could say, is your home cold and drafty? We can make it warm and safe with a fireplace. Or is your fireplace cold and drafty? We can make it warm and safe. Now, if you repeat that over and over and over and over, you put it on the header of your website, you put it on your business card, you put it in your email signature. Anytime a customer comes into the showroom and you're about to go look at a fireplace and you say, hey, a lot of homes are cold and drafty because they're fireplace, we make them warm and safe. Let me go show you some fireplaces. If you do that over and over and over, you will own the problem. You will own it.
Yeah.
And even if your competition does the same thing, they will not own it because they are not talking about it in that same way over and over and over and over and over again.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Cold and drafty, warm and safe.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, I just want to be heat warm. Go to the warm and safe guys.
Yeah. If you're struggling with X, then buying Y is the right decision.
That's right.
Yeah. Robert, this has been so good, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you. It's been just a great couple of days. And hopefully, this encapsulates some of this workshop and helps everybody that's listening and watching apply it and start to have effective messaging that grows their business.
I love it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Robert Schnell. It was so awesome getting to spend that time with him in Nashville. And if you haven't heard our other podcast episodes with him, we'll link to those in the show notes. But man, there's some really good stuff. Actually, the last one that we did together was Business Desert Island. We recorded it in my car as we were driving through the middle of Oregon as he was visiting me from Alaska. And it was a really, really great episode. But thinking about our conversation on marketing, this is so important. I think that at the end of the day, we will not have a good message as long as we are the center of it. And I think about this a lot. Like as I talk with companies and, marketers and different folks in our industry, the way that I can tell that someone doesn't really know what they're doing is when they say, we need to tell our story. Like that, to me, like that is the giveaway. No, we have totally missed it because customers don't care about your story. They don't. You don't wake up in the morning and think, boy, I wonder what the story of the local tile supplier is. I wonder what the story of Home Depot is. No one wakes up in the morning thinking about that. People are the heroes of their own stories, right? They have dreams and ambitions and fear and aspirations. And like, that's the stuff that they're thinking about. This doesn't mean that people are necessarily selfish or that they don't like you or anything like that. It means that they have their own life with their own set of problems. And your job in marketing is not to tell your story. It is to show your customer how you can help them overcome the problems that they're facing so that they can have a better life. And there's a very distinct difference between those two things. And I guess it just comes down to this central idea that Robert and I talked about is that your business is not the hero. Your customer is the hero. And it's funny, like this is actually a concept. I mean, I'm going back 15, 16 years ago now. I remember having a sales conversation. Yeah, probably 16 years ago. And I was talking with someone about this, and we were saying like, hey, it's not about our business. They're not the hero. Like, it's about our customer. And then, a few years later, Donald Miller writes his amazing book, Building a Story Brand, where he really, really fine tunes this idea that is absolutely right. And if we want our marketing to be effective, we need to ask a few questions. Like, number one, who is this for? Because like an ad for everyone or a message for everyone is a message for no one. Okay. Who is this for? Number two, what problem or problems do they have? Number three, how does what I'm offering make their life better? If we approach marketing from that perspective, chances are you're going to come up with something pretty good. And the difference is who's the hero. If our business is the hero, well, hey, we started in 1975. We're family owned. We're military owned. We're veteran owned. We're fourth generation. Okay, like fine. I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad, but believe it or not, your customer doesn't care about it until they realize that it could help them solve their problem. So this is where we got to be nuanced. We need to draw a customer in with language about them, about the problems that they're encountering. Again, like we talked about it. Hey, are you cold when the power goes out? Okay, that's a hook. And that's dealing with a real problem that they have. Are you looking for a way to lower your heating bills and keep your family warm and safe all winter? We want to speak to problems that our customer has. If you're a manufacturer trying to get more dealers, like, don't talk about how great your company is. Don't talk about your products and services first. Talk about the problems that the dealer might be experiencing. Are you overwhelmed right now because every vendor you sell is way too complicated to price out? Our products are going to be the easiest to price out to where anyone on your team can do it in 20 seconds. Now, I'm making this stuff up as I go, but this is the idea that we want to speak to the problems our customer has. Because if you can articulate your customer's problem, it builds trust because they're understood. And this is why, like in the FireTime sales process, step 2 of the sales process is understand their problem. It's the reason why. Because no customer cares about a business until they feel understood by them. But when you have a genuine problem and a business shows that they understand that problem, that makes a connection. And now we start to trust them for a solution if they can articulate it. And so I think that this whole idea of the customer being the hero has got to be the foundation for all of our marketing, for all of it. In addition to this, I think that when it comes to marketing, it's really tempting to try to cram everything in. Well, we tell them we do this. Oh yeah, and tell them we do this too. And tell them we do this, and make sure that they know this. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. There's this argument about like the law of dilution, and basically it's this idea that oftentimes when we're making an argument for something, we think that by adding this evidence and this evidence and this evidence and this evidence and this evidence, we think that makes our case stronger. But actually, the way that people's minds work, it confuses them. And the more that we start stacking, in the case of an argument, fact and fact and fact and fact and fact, those facts actually start to dilute the power of that argument to where people don't believe it. So instead, what we want to do is we want to give the right fact, or maybe a couple of facts, the right ones that will move the needle, and we can have the rest on standby if we need it to further, validate and justify our point. But the exact same thing is true in our marketing, that when someone sees our website, or when someone sees an ad in a magazine, or something on Google or Facebook, or whatever it is that you're doing for it, there's so many things that they have going on. They do not have time to go, oh, they do this, oh, and they do this, and they do this, and they do this, and they do this. No, it's in one ear and out the other. It's diluted. It's diluted. In my view, your messaging needs to be about one thing. That's it. It needs to be about one thing. And this is why you actually need to have different messaging campaigns for different parts of your business. We're going to talk about this actually more in our very next episode. We're going to do a deep dive on this. But you need to figure out what is the overall problem that your company solves. Now, you might sell a whole bunch of products. They need to roll up to one central problem. And that's how you build your overall company messaging. Now, within that company messaging, you're going to have a messaging campaign and brand script for product A, product B, product C. You're going to have a messaging campaign and brand script for customer group A and B and C. And that's going to be more nuanced than your overall company one. But if it doesn't roll up to the company level where it's like, hey, at our company, we do one thing, your marketing will be incredibly complicated, difficult to understand, and it will be ignored by people. That's just the way that it is. Now, as people are attracted to your business and they come deeper into the sales funnel, then we can tell them more about it. We can get more nuanced. We can give them more information, but we cannot do this in the first pass that they see at our company. They need to be drawn into a funnel. And again, this is why every business needs an intentional, automated sales funnel. Intentional and automated. There can be points of human contact throughout it, but I mean, email campaigns, text messages, like lead generating PDFs, instructional videos, different things like this can add nuance and color about your company. But when it comes to effective marketing and trying to make that first impression, we got to pick one problem that we're trying to solve. And if we try to cram too much in, it's just simply not going to work. So think about this, like for your customers who buy your products, what's the number one problem that you solve? I have a friend in the Northeast and they have a really simple message. Their job is to help their customers stay warm and save money. That's what they're trying to do. That's the problem that they're trying to solve. They're trying to help them stay warm and save money. That is an incredibly effective message because it's true. There's no spin on that. It's true. They can defend it by showing the cost of their products, the cost of fuel and of heating, compared to what it would be, using the grid or oil or something else. And it speaks to the heart of a problem that people in the Northeast have in the wintertime. So this idea that less is more and doing the hard work of finding the one thing, that's where you get the return. And this is why marketing is so difficult. It is not easy. It is not about telling your story. It is about understanding your customer's problem and articulating how you can help them win so their lives are better. That's what it is. In our latest Fire Time magazine, I got it right here, in the marketing section, we have a gigantic quote that starts the section out. And I absolutely love this. It's by Beth Comstock. And it says, "You can't sell anything if you can't tell anything." You can't sell anything if you can't tell anything. And I think that for many companies in our industry, we don't know how to tell a customer that we understand their problem and that we can help them find a solution to it. It's not about telling our story. It's about helping our customers with where they are. And that's what makes good marketing. So hope you enjoyed that conversation with Robert. Again, I know I'm kind of like going off the deep end on this, but I think this is really important. And our industry would be in a much better place if we collectively understood how to communicate clearly and how to make effective messages that were not about us, but they were about solving our customers' problems. We would all be better off for it. I mean, frankly, our society would be better off for it if we made it less about us and more about our customers, right? We are the advisor. We are not the hero. We are the advisor to help them win. And next week, we're going to have an in-depth conversation about this, and I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. So hope you got value out of this conversation and that you can put this to work right away so that you can have effective messaging that moves the needle for your company. Well, hey, If this podcast today has been a blessing for you and you want to support this show financially, you can do that by going to the website itsfiretime.com/join. That's itsfiretime.com/join. And we're incredibly thankful to those of you who do support this show month in and month out. It literally means the world. It's the reason that we can continue to produce this content and that we've been able to upgrade to be on video this entire season is because of that. So thank you. If you're not able to support it, totally okay. There's no pressure at all. We want this to be a gift that is a blessing for you. Now, as we go today, I want you to think about this. And I want you to go back and look at your website or like the last piece of advertising that you did. But when you look at your website or when you listen to that radio ad or when you look at, the magazine advertisement or the Facebook ad, I want you to ask one question. Who is the hero of this story? If the ad says in business for over 40 years, that hero is not the customer. It's you. Who's the hero of the story? Is it your business or is it the customer? If you can reshape your marketing to make the customer the hero, you will see an immediate difference in how it's perceived and in how people take action. On next week's episode, I'm actually going to be talking with an incredible guest from the team at StoryBrand, the conference that I was just at. And we're going to do a deep dive on a messaging framework that they teach and that I think is incredibly effective if you want to have a messaging campaign that gets results. So with all that said, I hope this has given you value and that you have a great rest of the week. We will talk again very soon. Thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast. To learn more, visit the website itsfiretime.com. Music from this episode was written and recorded by In Bloom out of Portland, Oregon. We thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. We'll see you next time.